Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Now, we are a weekly podcast focusing on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the metaphysical. Now, join us for thought-provoking discussions on paranormal phenomena, conspiracies, and all things unexplained as we talk to researchers and investigators about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs and aliens, urban legends, cryptids, and so much more. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at www.paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching and or listening, and we hope to see you for the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. So grab yourself a drink and a snack. Turn the lights off on the way back. Find yourself a nice comfy spot and enjoy this episode of Paranomaly. Stay with us, folks. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in for this episode of Paranormally Beyond Disclosure. We have Jeff Selver on with us. He's an experiencer, abductee. This guy's incredible. He's very smart. He has a lot to tell us. Jeff, thank you for tuning in with us today.
Yeah, Jim and Todd, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Hey, can you do us a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Okay. My name is Jeff Selver. I like to focus on that. I was an ex-banker, ex-financial advisor, had an MBA, still have an MBA, yes. And about midlife, I woke up to a lifetime of alien contact. So I know how unbelievable that sounds and how challenging that is for people to hear. And there's a bit of a story about how that all unraveled. It involved UAPs that were visible in my environment. And so the reality goes is that my teenagehood was a bit bizarre and odd and documented. When I was 20, I decided to, I had a, what I call a consciousness event when I was 20 years old back in 1997. And it was here in British Columbia where I was growing up. And the consciousness event was paired with a message to leave my life. So I abandoned everything. It was a very strange and bizarre event, and I resisted it. And but it was under bizarre circumstances and weird synchronicities that told me to leave my life. When I did, there were orbs in the sky that kind of followed me around, and I didn't really understand that as alien contact at the time. And then for about 2.5 years, I traveled around Canada, traveled around BC, British Columbia here. And then eventually met my to-be partner, my to-be wife. And there was a bunch of synchronicities that had me end traveling as well, too. We both saw a UFO the night we got met, or the night we met each other. And that kind of ended a weird period of my life, and all those orbs stopped. I followed her to Toronto where she lived, and I met a Vedic guru who was her guru at the time, and that became my life. And it was a trajectory that was consistent, where I got my degree in business and was involved with corporations for a while. And then, about almost 20 years later, all that weird period was haunting me. It was unresolved. I didn't understand, what had happened and why it happened the way it did. And there were emotions that were coming up. And then it was paired with paranormal activity that was new to me. I wasn't used to an idea of paranormal entities or whatever that was at the time expressing itself the way it did. And then it turned into orbs and objects once I started going down the rabbit hole of UFOs. And then it all just kind of busted open. And that's where I'm at now. I go around talking about the story, and it seems very relevant and very purposeful at this time, the way it all unraveled, because it's helping people understand the phenomenon. So, yeah.
Okay, let's drill down into the detail. Do you want to go back to was it 97, the consciousness, what you describe as the consciousness event in 97?
Yeah.
What's all the details of that? Let's
Hey, Jim, one second before we get into that. I
sure.
like to ask this question, Jeff.
Yeah.
Um, as a kid growing
Yeah.
up, have you had any experiences with like the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs at that time too, as a small child or very young boy or?
So now there was a small weird set of events that occurred as a child, and I saw a truck driving backwards with no one in it on the highway. I was about 7 years old at the time, and when all my alien memories unraveled, that was a screen memory, and I didn't know it. But it impacted me so intensely. I tried talking to people about it, and no one would really take me seriously. And small events like that, nothing that I thought. So I did feel that, at that moment I had touched something paranormal. It was kind of a weird way it holds in your mind, and then you leave it. You don't pursue it. You don't do anything with it, and nothing specifically that I thought was UFO related. Just small events like that, and that was probably one of the biggest ones. And then that was kind of it. The real events started to kick up when I was 16, when the actual aliens came back. So I had these childhood contact events, and they kind of ended at the age of 7. And it turned out that screen memory was the last childhood contact event. And then they came back at 16. And then, some kind of like mystical experiences started in my life. And I didn't have an answer for them. And it turned out that that was the entities as well, too. So the childhood is kind of strange. There's mysterious events. I didn't come home until 11 o'clock one night when I was 5 years old, and I didn't know that me and my friend were taken. And so the way the contact event happened, it's just we were taken, and then when we came back down, it was dark out, and my parents had called the cops, and I was 5 years old, or possibly 6, I think, but very abnormal for us at the time. So small stuff like that I didn't associate with weirdness. You just don't have an answer for it, and you don't understand it, and you're just a bad kid, and then that's the end of it. And so things like that were the big piece. The other is that I was reading books about ghosts though. So I was a kid, I was intrigued by the paranormal. It's very interesting how that links up. Yeah.
And so there was contact events when you were a child, but
Yeah.
you had no idea about any of them until
That's correct. Yeah.
way later on in life when
That's
they
right.
emerged into consciousness.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's move to then the 97 consciousness event.
Yes.
And,
Yeah, sure.
what's
So
that?
for me on the outside, not the guy who doesn't know he's having contact events. The year 1997 was this year of psychic phenomenon where all I thought I was doing was having self-exploration. And it turned out that it was largely instigated by the entities behind my life without my knowing, and I was actually a willing participant of it. And I couldn't even imagine that. And so I was a willing participant of this, the quote unquote experiment on their behalf. And all that was happening for me was I was having an increase in psychic phenomenon. So premonitions. It seemed significant at the time. You're just a kid. You're 20, or at the time I was 19, turning 20. So I was having premonitions about people I'd meet that day who I hadn't seen in years, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about them and they show up. Dreams that would turn real the day of I had them, the day after I had them, and the messaging behind them would be part of my journey, part of my spiritual journey. So it was like a message. So the dreams were prophetic. It kind of had a weird element to that. Had a couple moments where people were in my you could almost call it energetic bubble or auric bubble or something, whatever it is. And I was able to, I couldn't see them physically, and I sensed them. I saw their face and their details, and then I turn around and that's who they were. So I had these kind of strange moments of kind of, I don't know, energetic knowing. I got really into unity, and I could feel my energy expand out into the nature, and I was having these kind of experiences. I thought all of it was private, and I was reading books as part of self-exploration. And then as the year went on, I took up a class in music school. I was a bassist at the time. And then by the end of December, like November, I picked up a book. And The book was a book about people who travel in the name of God, and they've abandoned everything in their lives, and live off of synchronicities, live off of the magic of kind of self-reliance, and of relying on yourself, relying on your intuition and your spirit. And something in me said, that's what I have to do. But I couldn't imagine that that's what I would want. That's what I would do. It was more of a, hey, that's powerful. I love the ideas of that, but I'm going to keep living my life as this 20-year-old musician. I had a girlfriend at the time. I had friends. I thought I was in society. And then all of a sudden the synchronicities all kind of like coalesced. My parents decided they were moving. So I was out of the house for my first time in my life. My friends, there was a feeling that my friends were kind of disbanding, like everyone was kind of moving apart. And it really coalesced at the end of the year 1997. Me and my girlfriend broke up. My band broke up. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all this stuff just started to leave. And then the book literally said, this message will be for yourself when your world falls apart. And that was the beginning of it going nuts, because I was like, this thing is speaking to me, and I didn't understand it at the time. And
can I interject something real quick?
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
As far as your like ontological framework, you were reading books and stuff, and you sort of had kind of spiritual framework going on. Were you aware that the universe was kind of conspiring all this at the time? Was it something that was recognized?
So Carl Jung was earlier in the year, I got into Carl Jung, and Carl Jung's, he has a whole thing on synchronicities. So I fell for that. I loved it. I was actually experiencing them myself. I broke up with a girlfriend early in the year, a prior girlfriend, and then immediately had a bunch of synchronicities about spiritual growth. Someone would throw a book in my way, or anyway, it's just a chain of events. All of a sudden you're at a bookstore and a friend turns around and we both see this book that we were just talking about, something like that. So we kept having these kind of like spiritual growth synchronicities. And so I was questioning the nature of the universe at the time. Quantum reality wasn't in the place it is in now, but we had a friend in physics and they were talking to us about quantum reality, and we were believing it. We're soaking it up. We were in that realm. And for me, already having some type of energy experiences, I was sold. I believed that something immaterial was going on with the universe, and it made sense to me that explained spiritual experience and explained synchronicities, because eventually by the premonitions, by the time the summer was happening, and I was having premonitions, that would explain that as well too. This kind of like energy world that sits underneath of our world that can manifest as synchronicities. Mm-hmm. So I was already in a state of accepting that when this book kind of like amped it all up. And all of a sudden, all the synchronicities of my environment really, really ramped up as a message. And as an unbelievable message, abandon your life. And so yeah, that's pretty much how that unfolded. And of course I fought it. And then the synchronicities amped up. I had dreams about it. And I had and then eventually I was actually out one night saying, why do I feel like I should do this, but don't want to do this? And then I'm sitting under the stars and I'm basically talking to some presence that's making this, there was the message. And then there was I actually recorded as December 6th as the day that so there's this synchronicities that kind of came out of the book. And then it was like, it was speaking to me in some kind of weird way to like, this connection with God or this universe, this source thing. And I kind of loved the idea of it. And then out of nowhere on December 6th, I basically had an internal change. Whatever was going on with me, I have more understanding of it now, but at the time I had none. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's my awareness, the energy of my awareness had changed. And I felt that my cells had light in them, and I could feel what I call the spirit body, the larger body. And I could feel my movement through it. And so I could feel my spirit. And when I focused on it, I could feel the source in my consciousness, and I had to focus on it. And then I could feel myself in the environment. And I was freaked out actually by it, believe it or not. I was trying to achieve these things. So,
was it just completely suddenly, or were you meditating, or?
Yeah, and I didn't meditate. I wasn't a person seeking these type of experiences. That's the crazy part. I was not looking for this type of event to happen. I thought I was going to, I was a punk rocker, man.
Mhm.
I was into bass and I was in slap bass, and I thought I'd be playing music all my life. And though I felt something would happen in my life, I always attributed it back to music because I thought that was my purpose. So I couldn't imagine a scenario like this. And the idea that it would pair itself up with a message actually amplified the intensity of the kind of the freakiness of it all. And so I'm having this kind of, alteration of myself. And it was paired with, like, over the weeks. The best way to frame this is that, and I have more understanding about this stuff now because I've studied Vedic, and I guess you can say I've been studying consciousness kind of ever since. The mind is a filter. And so whatever you put your focus on is an act of filtering. And then you have a subtle awareness. Your consciousness sits in the background. And though it's being filtered through your mind, your brain, if you don't take focus on your, the experience of your consciousness, then it can bypass you. But if you know how to kind of access consciousness or focus in on it, you can kind of expand that experience. And so that's what's going on here, where I'm not thinking to gravitate towards this, yet it comes out in maybe hypnagogic states. Well, walking or playing music or driving, and I'd have these kind of things kind of come out in me at times, and it was showing me I could feel the larger connection, but didn't know what it was all about. And so hey John, and yeah, it's great to see John there. And so yeah, that's the gist of it. And basically I resisted it. That's the traumatic part, where I didn't know how to follow up on that message. And I didn't know what it meant. I literally thought it meant I was going to jump, out of my door with a backpack and start sleeping in ditches. And who wants that? And so I didn't really understand what to do or what was going on. So I resisted it for 2 months. And by resisting it, that awareness, that consciousness awareness went away. And that made me feel awful. Then I started feeling guilty, like I missed an opportunity. And it was actually that guilt that was the motivator to, okay, whatever that was, I can't live with myself if I just resisted it. So I have to go back now and really assess this. And when I did, I just started giving all my stuff away, CDs, music equipment, left my place, left the room I was sharing and everything. And that was it. And so it's February 21st, 1998 that I drove away. And I synchronistically, I had a car. I got a car right in the week I decided to leave. My parents found a way to give me a car, and that was really weird. And so I took that. And that was it. I was traveling in a car, and that's how it all started.
Just real quick, going back to the message.
Yeah.
What specifically was the message? Do you mean the synchronicities in your interpretation of them and what you felt?
Yeah. So here you have this message.
Okay.
Yeah, this message to leave your life and to travel, or to, surrender to God, surrender to the universe, surrender, like, the message was very explicit. Get rid of every connection you have to society, because it's hindering you. It's kind of the idea. And so it's hindering our experience of spirit. And there was a real a truth about detachment that was kind of part of that message. Like, to learn how to be detached, you actually have to remove yourself from your environment, from your world, from the things you think that make up your identity. And I actually gravitated towards that as a truth. I thought actually that answered actually how to maybe start having a deeper experience of spirituality that I was looking for at that time. And so I really internalized that message. And that was the synchronicity, was this message will be for you when your world starts falling apart. And boom, that's exactly what was happening. Anything I could think of to attach to was literally moving away from my environment. And the biggest one being my parents leaving. My parents literally left on January 1st, 1998. So my dad got a job literally like a month before like early December, or maybe late November. My dad gets a job and they have to leave. And so they're leaving me behind. And so it was very significant. It was actually oddly timed. For me, the synchronicity couldn't be denied. And then there was this added element of this bizarre consciousness experience that was tied to it. So doesn't matter what anybody would say, it's undeniable to me. So yeah. And especially if you have someone studying synchronicities out there, Carl Jung, who's giving validity to some kind of, space and time intersections with consciousness, then that was exactly what this was. It couldn't be denied to me. Yeah.
Were numbers a part of that?
Yeah, like
Did
111,
they
333.
yeah, did that I've always felt it, at least in my own
Oh,
experience, it seemed like
yeah.
the
I can think of something.
coincidence of the numbers was what kind of,
Yeah,
spearheaded the whole event, it was what
yeah,
kind of, made me realize, "Wait, there's something going on, why is this happening?"
yeah.
And I've always felt like 11/11 was kind of like the introduction,
Right,
and then, at least with me, my conception of what could be a synchronicity kind of expanded from that point. You
right.
started to notice
Yeah,
all correlations or patterns of things, something that's said to you one day and then the next day you hear the same thing. You start to recognize, all of this,
yeah,
all of these are potential messages. When did you start to see the lights in the sky? Did
yeah.
you not start to see lights in the sky in the same period in the late 90s or?
It was 1998. Yeah, that was the beginning of it. So I saw. So I had a weird, okay. So that answers another part I was explaining, which was so I had the consciousness event, and because it seemed tied to this message, I had some synchronicities that made me feel another presence was involved with that consciousness event. So I'd really go into detail in my book what those events are, but I was suspicious that some other entity or something was invisible was interacting with me that made this event happen. And of course, I could only interpret it as spiritual, as almost divine. I felt like it was a divine gift. So that was part of the guilt feeling. But not knowing how to respond to this, I literally go out to a field one night, still with my girlfriend at the time, still having my girlfriend at the time, not with my girlfriend there, but at the time I'm still trying to figure out what to do here. Like I'm abandoning all my aspects of my life. So I go on the field and I lie down and I feel like I'm talking to this invisible sky. And I'm like, listen, I don't know what this is, but I want to do this in my next life. I don't want to do this right now. And as I'm speaking, an object flies to the sky. Now I just interpret it as a meteor. And but it didn't really act like a meteor, but it was just a thing that just went and flew across the sky, and it was in my line of trajectory, and I couldn't help but notice that was a weird synchronicity that I said that something responded, and not that I'm sitting there saying it was a UFO, but it was the beginning of having that kind of weird link up where I'm maybe saying something or thinking about something, and all of a sudden it's something is manifesting in the sky. And that synchronicity made me feel that something is here, like something. I thought it was just spiritual, like spirits. I couldn't quite wrap my head around it all. And so the funny part is here I was thinking I was negotiating to end this thing. I just want to go back to living my life. And because there was a synchronicity, it actually made me feel that, man, this would be amazing if I actually took advantage of this, because I feel like I'm connected to something if I take advantage of it. I have experienced more spirituality or experience a growth of myself. And so so all it did was create more conflict that this might be a fun idea to, expand myself. Even though I was ridding myself of everything I knew, there was an idea that I was connecting with something and maybe I could work with that. And so that was the first time something weird like that happened. But then traveling, as soon as it started, 1998, so February 21st is when I left. April of 1998. So I'm already traveling 6 weeks or so in, and I decided to take my a backpack over to Hornby Island. And that night, I see a red object over top of the island. So that's the very beginning of weird objects and lights and stuff in the sky. And so that turned out to be a contact event that I didn't know about. And there was a weird set of events, like a weird screen. I don't know if it's a screen memory still to this day. I don't know if it's a screen memory, but a woman was beside my tent in the middle of the night, and I felt like something had happened afterwards. I actually woke up in the morning saying they were here, and I didn't know what it even meant. And so that was the beginning of it right there. Yeah.
So importantly though here, like you had no conception of extraterrestrials being involved in anything with this. You were still interpreting it from a more spiritual framework or
I said in
right at
this
what
journal, maybe this is aliens. It's a really weird thing. Like I kind of didn't understand it. I just didn't make any sense to me what was going on. And so, yeah, I kind of
so there was some inkling about aliens, but it wasn't right until like 2019 that you kind
yeah,
of had the UFO awakening and kind of connected all of
yeah,
the lights in the sky and whatnot to
yeah.
aliens.
And it's they're like indiscriminate orbs. It's not like an orb was flying up, like only once, or I had twice that were really close range. And because they were just colors, I didn't really understand what I was looking at. And I didn't really per se know about orbs in that way. Like, I think even at that time I had read Whitley Strieber's books. And when I was younger, I was 16 and stuff, I had read Communion. And, still, even then he talks about like diamond shaped crafts. Like I didn't even really put together orbs. I didn't know that was actually a thing. And so I'm seeing lights in the sky and I just don't know what to make of them. And because it was related to me or some, tied to this spiritual experience, I could only consider it to be spiritual. And I couldn't imagine the next level of where it could actually have gone. Yeah.
Because it responded to you. So it's interesting that I've had the exact same kind of awakening experience with lights in the sky, thinking that there was, something, monitoring me. I did have some conception of aliens and CE5 contact a little bit. And it was the same thing with me. I put out, some thoughts out there, is there, something going on? And immediately it responded. Did you follow up? So with me, I continued to, on occasion, request, more appearances in the sky.
Right.
And it developed and developed and developed. And, there was really eventually dramatic ones, that happened. They can be really spectacular, meteor-like, but and what were the differences that you noticed? With me, it was compared to like, a normal meteor. What I noticed is that there was some that color-wise, it just didn't make sense, for it to be a meteor. There was some that was just really odd colors, fluorescent green, fading into blue.
Cool.
Some of them seem to have structure.
Right.
Some of them seem to manifest even when there was cloud cover. So, in that case, it could not have been a meteor.
Yeah.
And there was a kind of evolution of this, and it became kind of with me this. I was going through things at the time too. This kind of comforting thing as well. That was kind of
right. It's like a guide or an angel or something with you,
right? Sort of playing this role of,
at
least in part, reassuring me. Throughout things. So. How did that play out for you as far as the evolution of your relationship with the lights in the sky?
Yeah, you got it. So it's interesting. I didn't quite internalize that relationship. It's very, I don't know, maybe there was a subconscious thing for me to not do that. I don't know. So the first was the red object over Hornby Island. And I'd felt it beat. I didn't know if it was a flare. I couldn't make sense of it. And it was stationary and it just sat there and it was close. And then I would learn, over years later, once I recognized this was all alien contact, there's no such thing as flares like that. So they don't exist. And it was quite stationary for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And then it just went into the forest, and I assumed something was in the forest. I could feel it. Something was in the forest now. And I didn't know it was the middle of the night. And I didn't know if I should go investigate. And then I intuitively felt not to, and I intuitively felt to go to bed. So it's kind of interesting. I woke up in the morning. I woke up in the middle of the night to, take a leak basically. And I that's when I'd said they were here. I'd felt something had happened. I got out of the tent and there was a woman. She was like 30 feet and she was on the beach and she was not facing me. And her hair is blowing in the wind, and she's looking at the moon, and it's haunting. I'm like, okay, what is this woman doing here? Like, okay, so I had this weird object. I say they're here, and then there's this woman by the beach, and it's got to be the middle of the night. I guessing 3 or 4 in the morning, and her dress is blowing. It's got this wind thing going on. I'm totally weirded out. I do my business, and I don't want to scare her because I'm a stranger in a tent, and so I go back to the tent. But now, as I'm traveling, whenever I reflected on her, the orbs showed up. And that was the really weird piece. Okay, what's going on here? So it was like I didn't know what that meant, but it had it had a feeling. It was a haunting feeling, and that feeling seemed to generate the orbs. And so I started having that synchronicity where
the orbs have been, like a meteor-like.
Yeah, so let me explain. There's a couple different versions of them, actually. Yeah. So the first time it ever happened, the synchronicity, again, it was actually over the water. So I made my way all the way up to the Atlantic, And so here I was at the coast, literally at the coast, and I'm dreaming about that woman. That was so cool that night. What was that all about? And I'm thinking about that woman. And as I'm going out to the edge of a rock cliff, almost like she had done, there's a white object floating over the water. And it's not just floating, it's kind of shooting over the water. And I have a pretty good recollection that there's nothing that should be. And I was stunned, and I'm staring at it, and it's a white orb. So it, I just can't make sense of it. It's going at an incredible pace, and it goes for a small little bit, and then just that's it. It's done, and there's no more light. So I don't make sense. There's no cloud cover. There's no nothing, and I can see pretty relatively, out into the water that there's no boat. So I couldn't make sense of what that was, but I did notice it was synchronized with that thought. No more than probably 2 or a week later, maybe less, maybe a couple of days, I'm sitting underneath I'm sitting under the stars. I dream about that woman again. When I do, a meteor flies across the sky right in my eyesight, like the timed with it again. So I'm like, that's bizarre. And then as I'm sitting there questioning all this, 2 at the same time, again, over top of me, and they split in half. And so I'm watching this like spectacular, display of whatever's going on in my life. And it's all synchronized with this. And I'm just feeling that something is going on here, but I don't know what it is. So events like that were consistent. And they kind of happened a little bit more when I was out on the East Coast, but it really picked up when about a couple months later, as I went to the Okanagan, and then they were stationary. So I caught them. I couldn't help but feeling I was being watched. So I would be out in the middle of the desert in the middle of the night, and I would all of a sudden just felt like I'm being watched. And I look up, and there it is sitting there. And in that time, it's close. It felt like it could have been, maybe 1,000 feet in the air, and it's so close you can see the curvature. So that's not a satellite or anything, and it's stationary too. And then once I catch it, it dims. So then it's not moving, and then it's gone. And you see there was an object there, and it's not there anymore. And that's white though, so it's still, but it's got a curvature. It's so close I could see that it had some type of something to it, but I didn't know how to make sense of this stuff. And then while I was out there as well too, I had a blue light scenario and that turned out to be a contact event, and I didn't know it either. And this was bizarre. It's an empty sky with a single cloud. And then out of nowhere, I'm walking, and I look up. For whatever reason, I want to look up, and the cloud is blue. But it's middle of the night. Cloud is blue, but it's blue from an object I can't see lighting it up. And I can see it's as if the object is beside it, because the shadows on the cloud are sideways. So I can make sense that I'm looking at something that isn't making any sense. This should not be the way a cloud is being lit up. That doesn't make any sense. What's going on? And I'm looking around, not understanding it. And the moment I look far down the valley and look back, it's gone. And so it's just a normal cloud. And so there's no object there. There's no lights. So that was a weird blue one I had. And so that's probably the gist of it. I continued to see objects that would speed into the sky, and they were sometimes closer or distant. But that's the general scenario of what I was looking at. Nothing else that really, it was so consistent. I wrote about it, called them those in the stars who follow me. So something I felt, I felt like there was a presence there, but I couldn't make sense of it in general, right? So,
did this happen with you? So what happened with me was sometimes the sightings with me, it was never stationary orbs or slow moving orbs. It was always the kind of shooting star type, I refer to them as. They would sometimes time out with what you were thinking. I know the thoughts with the woman, but in addition to that, were they also accentuating certain ideas that you had or thoughts? Like, were you thinking about something that you should maybe do, or something that they wanted to accentuate as important? And
they do that now. Okay. So that's interesting. That's and I get guidance from them that way. And it's very unique. And so like, it's a bit of a game. So when they're in the environment, I know they're here, and so they'll do something to show that they're here. So there's a pulsating light, right? Sitting there pulsating, very slowly moving, and it disappears. And you're like, okay, they're here. And I can sometimes feel them. And then I'll be hanging out, and I maybe have ideas like, hey, should I do a presentation on that? Or should I talk about that? Yeah. And I'll see I'll definitely see, I'll get guidance from this type of like, state orbs that are fast, or they don't even have to be fast. They can just be slowly moving and then disappear really quickly. Yeah. So, and sometimes sometimes there's like 4 of them or 5 of them all coming out all at once above me. And
Oh,
so
really?
it's a distinct and definite communication about my thoughts. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. That's what happened to me.
Very interesting.
So let's progress onward to, was it around 2016 when you started to rethink about all this stuff? And you kind of had some realizations that occurred at that point.
Yeah.
Jeff,
So
before you answer that, what are they asking you? I mean, they're asking you questions. They're communicating with you, correct?
We're definitely communication. Definite communication. Yeah.
What kind of communication were they doing? What did they ask you? Or I know this was a long time ago. Were they asking anything specific? Was you asking them anything specific?
Do you mean traveling in 1998, 1999 kind of thing? Or do you mean presently?
Back in
the day?
Yes.
I wasn't attempting any communication.
Okay.
So I didn't understand it. So I was just the hapless observer, recognizing that these things were like the idea that was happening, that linkage between my thoughts and my inner world with this outer thing, very new to me.
Okay, so you wasn't
very new to
anything, but you knew it was happening.
But you can't deny the synchronicity. You couldn't deny that linkage. And so and of course you just sound like a crazy person when you start talking like that. So it becomes a private experience you have. And but I wasn't at the stage where I could imagine I could start talking with it or something wasn't even a thought to think that I should maybe start asking.
I was just very curious as know if that was something you was already figuring out, but since it hasn't been, I will get to that later on.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
I wanted to add. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add one more thing as far as interesting things I've noted with flybys, the shooting star type lights in the sky. They would also seem to occur in tandem with synchronicity. And they would almost sometimes kind of, because synchronicity, at least at first, when you're starting to read synchronicity that's happening, you're kind of doubtful, was this a synchronicity? Did this in particular mean something, or was it just random? And they seem to aid that process of getting me to understand that it was true synchronicity by showing up in tandem when synchronicities were going on, or maybe before the synchronicity happened, or somewhere in the close vicinity of the synchronicities.
Yeah.
And it would kind of legitimize that. So they were kind of assisting with the process of me understanding the synchronicities, or believing in the synchronicities. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's great. I'd say that happened. So there were 2 big synchronicity heavy parts to my story. It's when I do leave. So it's about it's about a 3-month process of me fighting in this and then eventually leaving. And the synchronicities, they just add up. It's like, you have to listen to that one. If you didn't listen to that one, here's a new one. And they just keep pummeling me with synchronicities. And then the same thing happened when I met my partner, who was part of me leaving traveling. So when it turned out all the memories come out, they actually had a plan in their minds. So, and it was all planned out for them in these years. And so they really did think of it very structuredly. And for me, I was just experiencing these synchronicities. Now, presently, that happens. So I had, again, with the consistency of the relationship, I can say, hey, I didn't know what you meant by that. And I actually can get more clarity about it. I definitely can. It's very interesting. And so I think I know what you understand. I understand generally what you're meaning, and I think it's very cool. So 2016, I had a contact event and I didn't know about it, and it happened right here. And for them, that was when they said, your memories are open now. But I had no avenue. I had no way of finding them. I had no idea to look at aliens. I had no premise I had nothing leading me down that rabbit hole. I had avoided any topic of strangeness after having that consciousness event. I didn't want any more strangers in my life. I was a disciple of a guru. And then I just focused on reality, and I got got my jobs and my career, and I got my education, and I also love to play music, and I just focused on reality. I didn't focus on, other things, though there were some weird things that happened to me, psychic stuff, blah, 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 was happening around 2008 that started some weird things that felt out of control. So that wasn't me going down that rabbit hole, it just happened to me. But the bottom line was that 2016, them saying that, it seemed to start something in my life. And I had this discordance, and I didn't understand where it came from. It was like an unplaced discordance. And it went on for a couple of years. And I thought that maybe it was because I had chosen the wrong job and I have to find a new job. And I kind of felt like something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was. I just didn't feel, and I started having dreams about apocalypses. And that was really weird to me too. And they were intensely real. Like texture. I could feel the texture of the meteor that was coming down, and I could see the impact and the way it was blowing out. The air shock was wiping things out, and so I was being traumatized by repeated apocalypse dreams.
Always the same type of cataclysm, or were they
all the same? It's a meteor. Always a meteor.
It's always a meteor.
I started telling people I'm having like psychic dreams about meteors. I feel like a meteor is going to come. I don't understand it. And it was repeated over years. It didn't add up to me. And I'm not a guy who sits there and thinks about this stuff. And so all of a sudden it's occurring. Yeah. And it's paired with this feeling that I have to become more spiritual. So I had a guru, but because I was traumatized by this consciousness event that happened in my past, I was unresolved about things. So I was, sometimes in spirituality, you're kind of wishy-washy. You're like kind of into it, but you have your own baggage. You're not dealing with it and you don't know how to deal with it. So you're like learning, but you're not really applying everything. And there was kind of that going on. And I felt like it was time to start really, like, I have to get back into spirituality. It wasn't even anything. It wasn't something me finding purpose in my job. It was that I felt something was out of place. And when I did that, I started to think about the consciousness event. Like, what the hell was that? Back in 1997. So something just kind of went cluck, cluck, cluck. And when you read my story in the book, it's all clear. It was the entities that kind of opened everything up. They gave the dream. They started giving the impression, the psychic stuff about meteors. And it all seemed to like start a snowball effect in me. And so, several years into these, maybe 2018 or something, I'm really feeling the discordance. I'm questioning that period. And I actually forgotten a lot of it because I'd been traumatized by it. And I didn't know how to start researching what had happened to me. And safe to say, that was kind of the gist of it. I started having paranormal events. The paranormal events really started to kick up. So I started having like ghost poltergeist activity in my house. And then it really amped up one night where I got scratches on my back, also a contact event. And that's technically my last physical contact event. And my wife witnessed that. And I woke up one night in a brief period of like 2 or 3 hours. And there was all these scratches all over my back that shouldn't have been there and were impossible to have been there and weren't there the night before. And
so were these the paranormal events? Were they ultimately just indications, though you didn't know it at the time, of the abductions, like the marks from an abduction, or were there other things that were unrelated to abduction events that were paranormal occurring?
The way I internalize that paranormal activity now is largely the main entity that I interact with, who's now all these orbs, being in my physical environment and being very gentle and slow to say something's up. So, one day, my iPhone goes missing. I was just looking at it, and I'm looking around the house, and I come back and it's there again. And it's on the spot where I put it. I'm like, okay, I'm not losing my mind. I'm a pretty clear guy. So what the hell's going on? And then I'm at work and a door opens up when I just looked at the door was closed. Things like that are going on around me that are weirded out. That whole period is gone. So it was a really intense, like a year and several years of like this kind of amplified poltergeist activity that I couldn't make sense of. I had no reason to understand why this was happening to me.
And in hindsight, do you think that all those events were kind of expanding your conception of what's possible or reality, or do you think that those were serving you in some kind of way insofar as your awakening?
I think the best way to frame it is that there's an entity alongside with me. So, because I wasn't unfamiliar with all those ideas. the poltergeist stuff, the realm it occurs in, yeah, I wasn't unfamiliar to it. And just in research, I guess you could say, not that I had specifically ghost type experiences at that point. I did have a poltergeist weird thing happen when I was traveling. It's one event that was enough to make me remember it for the rest of my life. But generally, I don't really have those type of experiences. But so it wasn't a shocker as in to bend my nature of reality, but it would be a bit of a shocker that something is with me. And now that thing was was slowly making itself known, and also uninvasive. So everything was very okay and gentle and not too scary. And sometimes communicating with when I was having a thought about something, it was responding. And that way with the orbs, I was having that in poltergeist activity. So about what to do and what not to do. And I was having like a weird fork move when I was thinking about something to do or not do. And so, yeah, that poltergeist it was that type of thing going on. And it was getting me familiar with this idea that something was with me. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'd taken a bit of a break in my life while I lived out my normal life, and now it's coming back. And that's kind of the gist of that feeling.
I have to ask real quick before we move on from this point. What about sounds? So one thing that whoever it is has begun to do with me is they will generate certain sounds, particular sounds, typically with screens and things, or sometimes a plastic bottle. They can do something which creates, in the case of the plastic bottle, like the crackling sound, or with the screen, any kind of monitor, I'll hear like a crackling sound, which I know, just could not be,
yes,
happening due to, just like
yes,
humidity or barometric pressure,
what
have you. And they're always like timed out, in correlation with.
And all these talks you're the only one who explores these very specific things. You got it. I have one right here in my bedroom. And and it definitely is responsive. It's responsive to my environment. And yeah, you're right. I sit there and think about it too. Like, okay, is there a temperature change going on here? And what's happening here? But it's not unlike me to have something weird and paranormal. And yeah, there's like versions of this. They're subtle. And yeah, the crack when you're having a certain type of thought, and you're like, oh, that's a weird thing. And should I listen to that? And then I can get it amped up. I can get knocks on my window. And I live on the 18th floor. So knocks on my window is like a really big deal. And I can get floating things. But it's always safe. Nothing is terrifying me. It's always communicating something. And I might be in a headspace where I'm able to accept it. So then she's doing something. I've seen floating water. I've seen angel hair, like floating angel hair and stuff. And yeah, it goes on and on and on. And I just can't wait for the public disclosure, and we can all see these things on holograms to see what was happening to me, because it was so extreme sometimes.
Now, Jeff, I've been a paranormal investigator for 30 years, a little bit, about 31 now, getting ready to be.
Yeah.
And are we talking about, because you mentioned poltergeists?
Yeah.
And poltergeists are basically created by a person,
right?
And then there's then you have your ghosts that are transients. They come in and out whenever. Right. They're not specific to any one or any place. Also, when we talk about extraterrestrials, ETs, some people think that they are ghosts, that because they skip in and out of the
dimension.
Yes, because they can go in and out of dimensions. How ghosts would do.
Yeah.
So what was your thought? Do you think that it's separate? Do you think that ETs are separate from ghosts? Do you think that they're kind of the same? Because you lost me with the poltergeist, and I kind of do them as two separate things.
Right.
So
you're right. I think I understand this as, so when I say poltergeist, I mean, an iPhone floating, right? Okay. Is like pretty bizarre. And when I think of ghosts, I think of an individual apparition.
Okay.
So something is manipulating my physical environment. And that's what I consider to be poltergeist, is a manipulation of the physical environment. And that's what was happening. I was having like a spinning grocery cart in the middle of a field that I'm the only one witnessing. It's like, what's
Okay.
going on here? And that's what the type of stuff I was looking at, manipulation of my environment. And then, yeah, I'm being able to move things. So shifting things and pushing things around, so something that was interacting with my environment. And then there's the ethereal, the apparition. And I do 100% believe that the entities are in that dimension. They're in that ghost dimension, that ghost realm.
Yes.
And I believe they're crossing over from their realm into that realm first before they're manifesting, if they're manifesting into our physical space. So they're kind of masters of this realm.
Yes.
And that's the ability to manipulate reality, maybe manipulate physical things. And, there might be some cases of humans going into these realms and abductions too. So, and also time, like we know that ghost realm has a weird relationship with time, because time can be repeating itself in that realm, and people can see the past when they walk into a space like that. So there's something weird with time, and the entities are connected in a weird way with time as well too. So I do see they're in that space. They've mastered something we can't quite understand yet. That's my best kind of frame or breakdown.
No, thank you for clarifying. I was just I got a little confused there. I
understand.
I had to get back to the
it's good. I like these kind of nailing down these specifics, because when you're alone in this too, right, you're just using the best colloquial language you can drum up. But
yes, all right, thank you, Jim. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, so moving on to the awakening process that you're going through, you eventually kind of went down, and this was necessary, that you went down the UFO rabbit hole, to use that term, because you needed, I think, ultimately to have these memories were going to come at some point, but you needed to be, I guess, kind of primed for that, right? In order to integrate, that knowledge. So you had to go down the UFO rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Go ahead and describe that.
It was traumatic to learn what happened to me. I mean, I'm laughing about it now. It's like, holy, so there was a priming definitely that was required there. I couldn't even begin to imagine what I was going to unravel. So it started with it was the beginning of 2019. So it started with Jeremy Corbell's documentary on Bob Lazar. And I actually had stayed away from UFOs and this whole topic. And I can't remember how I stumbled upon it. Maybe it was on the web somewhere. And I thought, interesting, I'll take a look at this. And I was always skeptical about UFO. I believed that there was questions to the whole thing, UFOs and aliens, but I didn't really like delving into theories about it. I felt, people were making up a lot of assumptions without knowing things. And so I didn't really want to go down that rabbit hole. And then with Jeremy Corbell's documentary, it's all very solid, right? This is someone's experience. It's very mechanical. It's very nuts and bolts. You learn about it. It's very fascinating. I believe the guy because it was very in depth in his life. And so that had me questioning stuff I'd picked up as a kid. The kind of paranormal things I looked at, and some of the Whitley Strieber stuff. I ended up finding a YouTube channel. It's called Finding UFO. It's still out there. And it's a really clear channel of just people's, especially in the earlier videos, people's anomalous objects that they filmed and they posted online. And once I started getting into that, that's when all the synchronicities started up. So I started seeing the objects I saw traveling. Yeah, they came back. So they came back at that time, like right when I started watching these videos. And I started having dreams off of the videos too. And so the dreams were stuff reminiscent of what had happened to me in my contact. And I kind of forgotten some of the weird dreams and events that had happened around that time. And they were coming up as dreams while watching these videos, or at nighttime after watching these videos. But the killer here was the orbs coming back that I had seen traveling were showing up right now at this period when I'm looking at these videos. That was the beginning of it all. Cause it's like, why, what's going on here? And not just that, I was questioning that period. I was questioning the whole consciousness event. So what's the linkage here with these orbs, this videos that are kind of matching some of these things, and now me questioning that period? And I didn't really want to know what the answer was, because I think I subconsciously knew that I'd be having to sift through some uncomfortable feelings. And so it took some time. And then that thing kind of started to communicate to me. I started to hear okay, first off, there was a spirit thing that happened in my house. It's all in my book. It's all laid out in nice chronological order. And that happened, I think I'm pretty certain it was 2019 now. So anyway, this thing came into my house and I thought it was a spirit and it pretended to be my guru. And I was in kind of down and out and it was trying to communicate to me. And when I asked it what it was, it told me it was my dolphin twin. I didn't know what the hell these words were, and I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't get what was going on. And I started to maybe question, okay, is this related to these poltergeist or ghost phenomenon thing going on? Like, what was going on here? And then with this orbs showing up, then I was starting to say, okay, is this all, what's going on? Is that thing that? And now this voice was communicating with me. Like, it was kind of freaking me out. And
when you say the voice was communicating with you, so you're talking about a telepathic experience.
Yeah.
Can you drill down and give a little bit more detail on the features of the telepathic experience?
So it was pretty much clear words. So it's pretty clear words. And I think within the year leading up to that, I started to hear it. And you get really nervous. You're dealing with schizophrenia. And so you're questioning what it is. And you do a quick Google research on schizophrenia. And you realize it's actually a negative voice, and this was a positive voice, and it was actually encouraging at times, and so it kind of interjected itself into my thought stream, and I didn't give it any energy. I didn't want to, and then when I started seeing the orbs in the sky, the voice kind of picked up, and one day it gave me a command, and that's when I said, "Only if you show yourself," all in telepathy, and that's when I had a meteor ball light. Sideways, whipping past the window. And it was in my neighborhood. So there wasn't a meteor flying or anything. And so that was the first time ever that there was a clear connection, voice, orbs thing going on. And so then that was, and I didn't want to go down these roads. I didn't want this. I didn't want a relationship with a ball of light talking to me. So, then I was meditating one day and I was reflecting on the consciousness event. And I just said out loud, I said in my thought stream, must have been that book I read when I was, 20 years old, that book that did all this. And then that voice said, no, it was our meeting with you when you were a young teenager. And I was like, no. And I had a whole thing there where I resisted it. And I'm in the shower. And then this thought comes up. And it's this, I learned out the screen memory. And it's like that voice was telling me to look at this thought. And it was this owl I saw behind my teenage home when I was growing up. And then I realized I never saw an owl there. And why do I have a thought about an owl that I saw there? And then I remembered Whitley Strieber's books that owls were used as screen memories. And I was terrified about that. Mm-hmm. But then I decided to muster up the strength and I drove out there, and it's about an hour away. And when I was there, I drummed up that screen memory and I could feel with the most distinct clarity one set of, two things. One that I thought happened as some kind of event where I lived out my normal life not knowing about this, and then another where something else had happened. And I didn't really know what that was. All I know that I could feel that thing was covering up that I'd been lured out. I could actually feel the telepathic feelings of being lured out by a friendly something friendly had lured me out. And I didn't know nor understand what the feelings were. And I could feel that had happened at a teenage time, and I didn't quite understand it. So it was the first time ever I'd felt like two separate realities going on here. And it was the beginning of that. And a synchronicity that happened right away. I came back home kind of terrified. There was a YouTube channel on my YouTube stream, my feed, like the first video was about screen memories from aliens. That was a really weird thing. And I used it as education. I thought that was really bizarre. Okay. And it helped me understand that, yes, the entities can get into people's minds and create screen memories. So what a weird day to have that synchronicity. Wasn't like I was looking up on the stuff on YouTube or anything. And then over the weeks and months with the flashbacks, I could feel being a 16-year-old on craft, and I could feel these moments, and I didn't really know. Like, I thought it was all the terrifying stuff. I didn't really have enough information about all this. And I thought it was all the, abductions and dragging you from the bed, and you're kicking and screaming and you're crying and they're putting needles into you, and they're impersonal aliens. And I had no idea that I had developed a relationship with them, and that I was all willing. Like, it was all this stuff that kind of would take time to digest. And so going to that screen memory, the owl screen memory, that's what I call my second contact event, not including the childhood contact event. So the second one, but that had weird impressions about the first one. So it was combined with, like, when I went to the second contact event, the location of it, I could feel that something else had happened on a field somewhere, and I couldn't figure what that was. And that was my first contact event. So they all kind of like domino affected. And once I had some kind of screen memories about those, then the third one kind of popped up, and I didn't know it went from like one to the other to the other to the other. And it took some time, and then I wouldn't even touch this stuff until several months in. I started thinking about hypnotic regression and how to unravel this in greater detail, because I started getting more comfortable with it and thinking I needed to understand what had happened to me. So,
okay, so the memories are starting to bleed through at this point. Can you just describe in a little bit more detail, like what that is, like that kind of is it behave similarly to a normal memory? Or, I mean, I just find it puzzling sometimes when people describe, the emergence of memories and how
yeah,
detailed they are. And I think you mentioned in a previous podcast that you could smell
yeah,
the smell, really
yeah,
acutely.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
were these memories unusual in any way? Did you register them as memories at first, or was there some confusion about that as to whether they were actual memories or?
So, because they contained the teenage impressions. So let's use, okay, the second contact event kind of unraveled the first. And with the first, I couldn't, the things I can most remember, because it's been years, but I've written a lot of this out in my own personal documentation. I could see a field. I could see the soccer lines of a field. So going to that second contact event, I could feel that there was a field involved somewhere else. So I'm thinking, I'm picking up my first contact event, and something had happened on a field somewhere, a soccer field. I could see the chalk lines, the old chalk lines they use in high school soccer fields that use chalk. And so I could see these chalk lines, and something had happened in the dark in the chalk lines. And combined with that, I had a very vivid memory of me standing as a 16-year-old. Okay, I wasn't aware I was 16. I was aware I was probably in grade 11, because I could feel. And the thing is, here, as you're growing up as a teenager, every year is different, right? As an adult, every year is the same. But as a teenager, my grade 10 is different from grade 11. I have more confidence. And my grade 12 is different from grade 11. I have even more confidence in grade 12. So my years are different. And I actually very quickly identified what year it happened in. I just couldn't identify the location right away. So I knew it was something to do with when I was coming into high school. I could feel the kind of insecurity I was at the time. And I had a general idea of what I was wearing too. So I knew the kind of the jacket I was having. I knew the time it had occurred around. I just couldn't figure out where and the exact when. And in that memory, this alien is showing me, kind of pointing at these cubes, these cuboids, I call them, like rectangular objects.
On a craft or on a
craft? Yeah.
Okay.
It feels like the whole environment is different. It's happening in a different environment. I could even intuitively guess really quickly this was on an object, this was on a craft, because the environment is not our environment. And so it's kind of how it's not just not our environment. It is probably safe to say the electromagnetic frequency is altered, but I think there's something tied to consciousness. So the consciousness field is a little bit different, and it's in some part how the memories get preserved, because you're in a different state of your consciousness while you're there. So you're not. It's the best way I can frame this is in a different frequency of your own consciousness is where these are happening at. And so that's the memories. That's like the first memory is the elder pointing. So she's pointing at these cuboids or these objects, these holograms, and I'm a teenager. And so, and then the chalk field is kind of combined with it. But then on top of it, as soon as I have the chalk field, I can feel that I had childhood contact events. And so the reality is, of the first contact event, I'm walking down a field in the middle of the night. The main gray alien I'm dealing with, she comes out of nowhere, and all my childhood contact events open up. And so, but in the memory, all I feel is that there's a soccer field, there's these chalk lines, and some reason I can feel my brothers. I can feel my friend Shauna as a child. So all these like memories are compacted into this soccer field that's tied to being in grade 11. So something was compacted with it all, and I couldn't understand the feelings, but knew it meant something a lot larger had hid behind my life for a long time.
So it seems kind of distinct. This emergence of this memory seems kind of distinctly different than a memory of just
Yeah.
something prosaic that emerges, that you remember when you're a child. Oh, I remember when I did this in a child, or something jogs your memory about something. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot more detail, and content, it seems. Now, did the memory emerge and then you like, and you're trying to like jog your memory more, and you're expanding the memory that way by trying to like remember more about it? Or did you were you
No.
were you Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't touch it. I didn't. I think the main part that I was really confused by was, where did these happen, and when did these happen? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, I couldn't figure
Mhm.
out.
Yeah.
I'm a perceptive teenager. I was like a nature guy. I would be out in the forest, smelling and looking for bears or wolves, kind of, worried about your safety. So I was always like hyper aware of my environment. This idea that these things had happened had confused me, and I couldn't even begin to imagine where they occurred. I was more confused by that, and then also not really clear the linkage between why was this tied to a consciousness event, and I wasn't really. It's safe to say I wasn't really kind of go further down the rabbit hole with them. I think I kind of left it up to a real clear hypnotic regression to understand the chain of events. But the flashbacks happened pretty much on their own. So I also at that point had the white room. So before I went into hypnotic regression, I known that. So I talked with a gray alien, this thing in front of these cuboids. I'd probably already gotten some of the dialogue out that some kind of arrangement or agreement was involved here that I couldn't wrap my head around, and it was interested in my future. And then there was a white room, and there was something unbelievable happened in that room. I'd been raised up and I'd been compressed, and I'd also seen a past life, and I couldn't even begin to imagine how all that happened. And I'd known that all without hypnotic regression, and then there was a mystic book thing that was confusing to me too, and I knew it happened here. That's a whole other thing, but all that was already in my head. That had already just come out over the months of just having these memories, and it all just kind of it's your subconscious like kind of spitting it out randomly. You're doing something, and you're kind of like, wait a minute, it's all kind of tying together.
Right. Do you think it was definitely random, or do you think that there could have been
No.
some
Yeah.
Order to them?
Yeah, well, when I say
and
random, I guess. But do you mean order as in the nature of which memories came out? Is that what you mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as, I mean, like,
Yeah. No,
do
you're
you
right.
think that there was some selection process on coming from them? As far as what memories were given to you? Because it seems like, I mean, there's some that I mean, the whole reason why, right, they're suppressed in the beginning is because you have to reach a place of maturity and
Maturity.
understanding in order to
Yeah.
sort of process that stuff. So it would make sense that there would be an order. And it would make sense that there could be some things that, you're not ready to integrate yet,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
uh,
memory, and I learned this afterwards, having the memories out, that they're contextual, right? So I can't make sense of a
Mhm.
fifth contact event or an eighth contact event until I'm making sense of the first contact event. And that's the reality of what ends up happening here, is that you're right. It was kind of interesting how they planted a screen memory around the second, which would just quickly lead me to the first. And then the first unraveled everything. And so it is very interesting. What's also interesting too is I really seem to have blocked out the terrifying stuff. And then it was in hypnotic aggressions that it's like, whoa, like something really terrifying actually happened. And that's why I had no memory of the medical stuff. I didn't know there was a medical event that occurred. And so, yeah, there's these kind of more terrifying elements that actually occurred. And that was actually shocking and traumatic in and of itself, that I didn't know I'd ever been that scared. That's a really shocking and traumatic thing to have, and that you think you walk around this life with a kind of straight sense of consistency and what you believe is what happened to you emotionally. And then all of a sudden to realize you were on craft, like screaming for your life, is a very scary thing to accept. And you have to kind of come to a, it takes, I think I took a week off from all this and was like, forget this. And then, I had to process, like, okay, I was thinking I was going to die when I was 16 years old on an alien craft, because they were putting things into me and I was terrified that they were doing it. And so I blocked out all that stuff. And then even as the memories dominoed out each contact event, and I wasn't prepared. I wasn't thinking it was I didn't know it would go as deep as it did. I thought the whole consciousness event happened from one contact event. I couldn't imagine that they had kept coming back. And then I couldn't imagine that I knew them every time. So, because I kept thinking, I probably was very brand new every time these were happening. And then, no, I'm aware of them. How is this happening? How is there a consistency in the memories? And that's a really shocking thing to put together as well, too. So it takes time. And then as those were happening, the terrifying ones were kind of blocked out. And then it wasn't until I got to the end that I'd known there were some other contact events, but I couldn't make sense of things. And I did what's called retracing, actually. Retracing actually helps you to get accurate information. And I blocked out I've tried to bury some of my previous regressions and bury things so I could come at them as if they were fresh, and testing myself what I actually remembered and what actually occurred, and to validate what actually really did happen here. And in that retracing, I guess I was more prepared for the traumatic stuff. And then some of the more, in 1998 was really heavy, where it was biological, and I didn't really want to know that, and my mind had blocked it out. And so that's the gist of it. Yeah.
So, question, did you need to, so in order to understand that the memories, like when the memories first started to emerge, like before you had kind of grasped, that these were real abduction events, did you need to come across the concept of missing time in abduction literature or content somewhere? Was that something that was kind of necessary? The concept of missing time, that there could be the possibility, that there's gaps in your life, that you just have no recollection of.
I'd already known about it. I'd already known about it from Unsolved Mysteries. I remember being a kid and watching an episode of some military guy who sees a UFO and then he's missing 2 hours. And then Whitley Strieber's books too had missing time. And that was actually the key. When I'm having a weird consciousness event occur, and I'm actually thinking about some other force involving themselves with me, and then I don't know that I really scanned my life, but I had no oddness where I had missing time. And that's part of the mystery here too. When I first had these memories out, how did this happen? I couldn't make sense of it. And now I'm actually leaning towards stopping time. And there's some, we got Lou Elizondo already saying that the crafts can do that. So, and I didn't know this was even research. I was already public when I started learning Preston Dennett. I don't know if it was Preston Dennett. It was another researcher, and Preston Dennett mentioned this person, that there is some evidence now that the entities appear to be able to stop time. You can have contact events happen beside busy highways. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Let's go into that a little bit, because this is something I've been grappling with in doing research for this podcast. You mentioned that's something that I think legacy abduction researchers typically didn't mention, or I don't think very many of them had hypothesized that they were doing something like that, stopping time, during abduction events. But there is a lot of things. I think of the man, the Linda Napolitano case, the man on the bridge, who witnessed the abduction event and saw that the entire city went dark, during the course of this thing. Yet there's nothing in the newspapers. Nobody seemed to notice, that had happened, and so like you could explain away that there's an alternative explanation that how they're able to pick people up from busy streets is that they're manipulating the minds of the other people in the other cars. They're wiping their memories or however they're doing it, and maybe that's, how that's explained. Or it's something more profound, like they're stopping time. I think research from NDEs also seems to suggest,
Yeah.
in some of these interventions, I think they are interventions that happen, and not just NDEs, but weird experiences that people have had where they should have died, but not died through some mysterious circumstance, and
Yeah.
they report a sensation of time slowing down,
That's right. Yeah.
which seems to kind of facilitate the intervention in some kind of way.
Yeah.
What else can you say to that effect as to what is leading you to believe that they have the capacity? Because that's hard to
It's really hard.
wrestle with, because they just stopping time in one locality, or
Yeah.
everywhere. It's just there's a lot of
Questions.
things
I
that
know.
are difficult to integrate with that possibility. Yeah.
So the first things, we have I think we got one of those whistleblowers. Is it Lou Elizondo talking about crafts that were larger on the inside than they appear on the outside? So we do have this idea that they're able to make space. And Susie Hansen, author of Dual Soul Connection, got a contact event where the entities explicitly say, yeah, we can make space. We can literally create more space where the inside space. And I think that's a good analogy here for time, because it appears, it's actually interesting to say, because are they stopping time or are they creating time within time? Because what happened for me was still a linear process of time inside some type of bubble of time. Now, okay,
right.
the physics, I actually, Rudy Schilt, who co-authored, astrophysicist who co-authored Susie Hansen's book, Dual Soul Connection, has a really good layout there about, they're saying consciousness, but, I grew up with a guru, and Advaita Vedanta is the teachings that I use, right? And Advaita Vedanta is this idea that you're God. Not that you're a piece of God, but the unified field is flowing through all of us, and we are it. And it's this kind of it's this high level of non-duality is what it is. It's this idea of a high level non-duality. And if my experience with the entities, my whole story, my whole book, that's kind of what it all leans towards, is that there's this unity aspect going on. There's a God element that's part of all this. And so let's say the crafts are actually utilizing the quantum field, the God field, the unified field, and they're taking advantage of it. And then that's where Rudy Schilt goes with all this. Then that would answer some of the physics. So it'd answer how they were able to stop time, because then they're actually taking something that's part of consciousness, and then they're able to, with tech, like we could do with tech, we can manipulate nature, right? So we can take soils and we can do things with it with a tech. We can manipulate water. Well, same thing here with a consciousness craft. You can manipulate time. And then he explains that with light as well too. Like how are they able to control light? Because it's clear in some contact events, they can actually take light and box it in, right? Or they maneuver light, and some of the beams people report don't have any radius. They're just lights, and they don't create any extra shadow of light or any shade of light. And we have no physics that can answer for that, unless the light itself is consciousness. So he does a really good job at kind of quantifying like that, and the reality being is that there is just a God field or a consciousness field or a quantum field that's ripping through everything. And then these crafts are able to localize and use tech to bubble and do whatever I believe, do whatever they want. And so some of my contact events, the first real hint was my 6th contact event. So it's happened in the end of 1997, September 1997. It's the second contact event before the consciousness event. And I'm with my friend. When all the memories come out, there's this insane contact event. And I had a suspicion something weird had happened, but I had no idea it was a contact event. I was left with a weird impression. I wrote about it in my journal. And then it turned out to be that was a night where, so basically, my friend turns to look at something in the forest, and we're both frozen. I have a memory of it now, presently, of this entity flying to his face and then flying to my face. And then when he seems to unfreeze me, he figures out it's me. We're the one, this is the guy I'm looking for, is kind of what he's saying. And then he takes me and he walks me to his, and we're walking to his craft. I have a pretty clear memory of looking back at my friend, and my friend's eyes are open. And I'm saying, what are you going to do with him? He said, we won't be long. So he's taking me back to the craft, and they're doing some kind of work with me. And it's very brief, the contact event is, and they seem to be checking something that was related to this consciousness event. And the bottom line is, I kind of kept scratching my head about it all. Why is his eyes open? Right? Like, if he was just frozen, like, his eyes would dry out. This would be a very awful experience for my friend.
Right. If he was just put into like a stasis, like a blank mind state or something.
Yeah. And that's what I assumed. Kind of, yeah. When I just had the memory, that's exactly what I thought it was. It was
right. You would think that there'd still be like the involuntary bodily functions that would still be taking place, like eye blinking or heart beating, et cetera.
Yeah. You got it. And so that was the first. And it took me some time to figure this out because I hadn't heard about stopping time before. So I already had this weird memory of my friend with his eyes open. And there was my first contact event on the field in 1993. I'm 16 years old, and the entity comes down on the ground from a craft, and I'm running away, and I'm caught frozen. Now, I assumed this was all tech that froze me. And the connecting piece here now is I've done quite a bit of meditation on all this, and there is a state of my consciousness that I'm in for the contact events I'm convinced are frozen are in this kind of frozen time bubble. I'm in a different state of my own consciousness. There's a consistency going on with the ones that I now convinced happened in a frozen time state. And there is 2 that I'm convinced don't happen. Sorry, 2 of the first 7 before the consciousness event happens. So I have 7 contact events before the year 1997. And 2 of them I'm convinced are happening in real time. And then the other 5 are happening frozen. And the 5 all feel kind of a similar consistency and feel. And the 2, they feel like I can feel the air in the memories. Like there's the whole bodily sensations are still in the memories. And so there's a distinct difference about who I am. And now I'm convinced this is how they did it. This is how they hid behind my life. They're sitting there taking me at these certain times. Everything's frozen in time, or they're creating time within time, and then everything's hid behind my life. There's also a command to not look at it from me subconsciously, and something they did to me in my first contact event. So this is it. They hid it all. I had a message in me, plus they sealed it all up. It's outside of time. And all that happens when you wake up to all this stuff at the age of 41 is a seamless awareness of an event. You can't make sense of where they're occurring, what state you're in, because you don't know what state you're in. You're just, all you know is this happened to me. You might not be able to answer all the behaviors you did. I did have some, like, why am I doing that? Why am I, walking out in the middle of the night? What's going on here? I don't understand. But nonetheless, I am now able to pin together that I'm pretty certain, I would say like 95% certain that 5 of the first contact of the 5 of the 7 first contact events that initiated the consciousness event, I am all happening outside of time, and with small little pieces like that. One of them, my friend being frozen and his eyes are open. It's a lot of detail to go into, but so I've done my own kind of detective work trying to figure this stuff out, because even for me it was a mystery, and I feel pretty confident that that's exactly what is going on here. That they're creating time within time. So there's a linear experience, and all you know is you're just having this linear experience, and you can't figure out where it occurred or how it occurred. Yeah.
So, but in the case of like abductees with missing time, where they were actually gone, for an hour or two, they get to their destination an hour or two late. I mean, what does that suggest? I mean, that wasn't a separate sort of timeline in which they were returned to the present of when they were abducted. Like, it seems like it was in this. I mean, what do you think? Does not missing time suggest that it was taking place in this time, not in a separate time bubble? Or
the first thing that is very obvious to me.
Yeah.
Everybody that they do this stuff with, they leave markers, and they want you to know what happened.
Right. Yes, I think the screen memory is the kind of the initial thing.
Yeah, they can cover anything up, and then they also can. And so think I was watching some researcher, or I don't know, some contactee. The person was returned, and they were upside down. They were upside down in their bed, so they weren't turned up right side up. And they thought, oh well, the aliens made a mistake.
The mistakes, yeah.
I'm like, no, not a mistake. Yeah, they know what they're doing, and that way you're left with the perplexity of it all. What happened to me that night, right? And they want you to know. They want the mystery to be there, and they want you to know. Also, that means you're going to make some choices. You maybe years later you'll come to a contactee, a convention or something. Like they want those things to be occurring, and so I see those as markers now. And for me, they didn't. When they don't want you to know, they just don't let you know. Like they'd have a way of sealing it up so you know when it's time to know. And I think that's what my contact events demonstrate, is that when you have those events, then you're supposed to know. And when you don't have them, they don't want you to know. And I believe it's the self too. I'm not saying I don't believe anything malicious happens here. I think that it's a degree of maturity, and there's certain things that are helpful to everybody involved, including yourself, when you do know all the things that you're supposed to. And so yeah, and then they may also be doing something different too with the time stuff there. They may actually be, I mean, I don't know. I'm certain that time is a part of this, and there might be time fields.
Yeah.
So different states of time. So yeah, time is faster and slower in different fields you're in, and depending what the entities are doing. So I think it could be a myriad of things going on there. But when the human is left with it, I'm pretty certain they want the human to know.
Let's go to, I want to, before the end of this, cover at least, I don't know if it's the first or the real prominent sort of contact event with the, what is it? The White Room event. Is that one of the earlier ones, or?
Yeah, that's 16 years old, 1993. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't we cover that one?
Sure. So I made an agreement with gray aliens to discover my soul. And the story I'm about to tell you, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty prepped for the weird. Sounds like you both are, but this is it. This is this pushes people's limits. So I made an agreement with gray aliens to discover my soul, and that was part of seeing this hologram. There was a timeline, and then they were decided that day, that contact event, they're going to initiate me discovering my soul, and then they would bury it. That's the whole thing. They would have this way of covering up or obscuring these memories. And so they take me into this room, and the room is, so I'm in my underwear, and I had a medical procedure. Now I'm in this room. They kind of, coerced me to go in. I didn't want to. I was just nervous. I didn't know what was happening. And though the room is like empty white, like just football fields in all directions, pure white, but it felt like a massive stadium type space, and even no space underneath my feet.
Almost like in the Matrix, that kind of scene in the Matrix where it's just all solid.
Where Morpheus is showing him the couch or the chair there. Yeah, it's kind of like that, except it's there's a vibe. There's something that's affecting me. Actually, I was actually hyperventilating. And I think there might have been no air. I can't quite figure out what was going on with me, but my diet, I was like, and I'm convinced there was no air, and time was frozen. So my body wasn't experiencing the things I thought it should be experiencing. And I think I was having a bit of a weird effect from it. And then it also seemed to be affecting my body. Like I could feel it was some kind of light field was penetrating my cells, and I was having a weird effect from it. I felt good, but I was way bigger on the inside. Yeah, like a TARDIS. Yeah, I agree with that. And so I'm affected by this light. The aliens line up. There's four small ones, like kind of 3 foot tall, and this one that I'm so far had made this relationship with. I'll eventually call the elder. And so she's a bit taller, like 4 feet tall, and she comes forward and says, "What's about to happen is going to be beyond your comprehension." And then we all start levitating. And it's kind of like the cells of my light started, like the cells of my body started to bleed light. Like light was coming out of me, and I was like, kind of in a state of shock, and then it's like the body phased. It's all I can understand. Maybe the material matter phased, and then all that's left is this kind of like ethereal me, and then it collapses. So it is very much like the room did this. The room is this magic room.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing as I start talking about this, I've had a couple of people in comments in different interviews. What if the aliens are like kind of just putting things in your mind? And there's nothing here that I can replicate. I can't replicate this. This is not I so far in this world cannot replicate what this is. My brain can't just be producing this. This happened to me, and then the entities ended up using it as this kind of consciousness event. And I proved to myself too, with kind of what spirituality is with intuition, and what intuition really is, that this was all real. So that's why my book is my story. Is that this is my best I can tell you that this actually happened. So I'm turned into an orb and I'm in a bliss state. So the human is a pure being. That's what we are. And then when you collapse I guess it's kind of like a Kundalini rising, the best representation we can have. But I think it's like more intense, like they kind of amplified things with this room. So it's this extreme intensity, and it erased my identity. I wasn't instantaneously, I'm not the 16-year-old. I'm this energy form. And also, what's clear what they were doing, the aliens aren't aliens anymore. So they also collapse. They turn into these energy things, and we're instantaneously all the same thing. And it's like and that's the thing. It's like a shared experience. I was in unity. This was a unity experience, a non-duality experience. And I could feel them, and there was a shared experience between us. And they were in joy. And I was in joy. And it turned into this bliss joy thing. And then they started whipping around. And then there's like encouragement for me to move around, and I start moving around, and it's just this childlike playroom.
Wow.
But this kind of energy exposure that humans don't know yet, we're not familiar with yet, this type of exposure of yourself. And it's just joy. They're just, and it's bliss though. So it's this type of bliss.
Like is ego death a part of that, like just a stripping away of all of the identifications,
everything, gender, human, all of it ripped out, right? And you're just this purity, a pure thing, a pure energy form. So all the identities, all the acknowledgements, and it's safe to say it's an ego death, but it doesn't even contain the thought processes. So it's like it's put on me, as opposed to me having to be like, oh, I'm becoming something else. Like there's no even thought process. It's just now I'm this, and I'm instantly responding to it. So I'm not even asking questions. I'm in a kind of a pure state about it all, and I'm accepting it. And then they start whipping around, and I start whipping around. And then there's this kind of game that they play where they can spin, and we share it. It's like a weird joyful sharing as we get closer with each other, and then as it gets close, it blows apart. And it was this kind of fun thing we did as these energy orbs.
Wow.
And I don't know how long this lasted, maybe 5. It would probably be consistent with a 5-minute type of experience. Also, there was different things going on, like they could manipulate the light or the environment with thought. So they were like shining out flashing lights, and there was different colors of lights. And they were able to I could see formed lights. I can't as if you could draw a box of light and all of a sudden it's flashing out. It's like they were able to create forms with light. It was really wild. And it was just super joyful. Freedom is the highest state of freedom. And then after 5 minutes of this, the elder, the main gray alien I'm dealing with, it's like she starts rotating and starts expanding herself. So she's turning into this big thing, and it turns out to be a portal. And see, I didn't have the knowledge when I had these memories that gray aliens can turn into portals. I didn't know that was a thing. Thank you. That's the elder. That's got it. Yeah. So she was in an energy form at this time, but that's the elder. Yeah. And so here I am as this energy form, and she turns into a portal. And so she says, "Men," and I slowly make my way inside, and I knew something extraordinary further from what we had just experienced was about to happen. So what this next scenario, it seems like holograms, and the holograms of real events that occurred. So I'm in a dark environment, and to my left is a dead body. So instant contradiction from what I just experienced. But over top of the dead body was a flickering light, like a shimmering, flickering light. And I had instant connection, like everything was instantaneous. That's me. And it's a weird, trippy thing. It actually felt like it was happening presently, but I could feel it was the past. So because it was and I found a description like this in near-death experiences, where the life review feels like it's happening presently, but it's all happening in the past. So they're witnessing, it really is like a hologram of real events that had occurred, but it doesn't feel like it's recorded. It feels like it's like I'm witnessing the real event as if it's happening right now, but I can feel the linear passage of time that had to happen in the past. So it's a weird crisscrossing of the two. And so I can feel, I'm having instant recognition that this happened like my past life. Like this felt, obviously, I could feel this was like 70 years ago. There was a weird sense or passage of time. And I'm actually saying, it's me, I'm alive, I've been alive. I'm having this kind of like, oh my God. And the elder is kind of like behind me, almost like kind of this orb thing, or this kind of feeling like she's kind of like over top of me. And she's like, watch this. And this energy, it's crying. It's a whole story here. I now know the details. It's a past life, died in the Holocaust. And so it's sad for its death. And so it's crying as it's going up. And it was kind of a young guy. He was like in his 20s when he died. And so he's crying as he's going up. And so I'm having this shared experience. I can feel him. But I'm also having this joy from the recognition that I live beyond the birth and death life cycle. I'm going up, it's going up, going up, going up. And then it seems to cross through a boundary, like a veil, a visible veil. And it seems to be in the Earth's upper atmosphere. I'm like third person vantage watching this past life me move into the afterlife. That's really what it is. And as it moves through this boundary, it transforms. And it becomes what I can only call the higher self. So it's a image of a man with a beard and a gown. And it's kind of like the elder put that image over top of it to make sense for my brain. My brain couldn't really comprehend the actual like power, purity or intensity of that thing. Plus there was nothing to visual to look at maybe. So she's helping me like being able to comprehend it. And then that gray alien, or that as soon as this thing transforms, it's detached from its past. So there's no sense of pain or anything that it experienced, what it had just gone through. It could transform to something that was more complete. And then a gray alien comes up to it. And then there's this realization like, oh my God, they're here. These things are in the afterlife. And so they're showing me, right? They're
in the afterlife in the same morphology as we see them in our reality, with the same bodies.
Yeah, it's like they can raise that vibration. It wasn't just an energy form. It was kind of like it was a physical corpus body. Yeah, and then so my thing is an energy form turned into this image, and then it's this actual gray alien coming up to it. Yeah, as if it like was waiting for it to move into this dimension, and it's sitting there waiting in this dimension. And it comes up to it, and I can't hear the dialogue, but there is a conversation happening between the two. And then it's kind of like, it's like Photoshop. They can take these events and slice and cut things out and make it all consistent so it's a nice picture. And so I don't see erroneous detail. I just see what they want me to see. So there's these two, gray alien coming up to the higher self. Then there's like another scene. So it cuts to a new scene. And it's my higher self. I'm looking over top of Earth. So I'm in the same realm. And then we're overlooking top of Earth. And my higher self is literally kind of like waiting on the side. And I can feel a passage of time. And so there's like, it's either the 40s or the 50s, something like that. It has this kind of like 50s era feel. Like I could feel like what I just watched was 30, 40s. Now we're 40, 50s. Something has happened. And my higher self is waiting, and there's these tall grays coming up from Earth, and they appear like almost like they're floating up, and then they move into this dimension, and they're communicating like something had been communicated to the human population, and the human population has determined how the next several decades would go. And my higher self was like waiting for that moment to occur, to figure out what to do with me. You know, if I was going to be involved in this agreement, I guess, with the gray aliens. And so it's waiting on behalf of this message. And so that's what happened. So whenever something happened is basically what they're saying, that determined these other dimensions and how these other dimensions respond to what humans do. And so that's it. Now the next sequence is my higher self is in front of a grid, and it's planning my life, planning the Jeff Selver life. And so he's at a grid, and basically this grid was like a plasma balls that you could go into, and there would be like spirit relationships, like not physical family relationships, but like groupings, like pairings, like spirit groupings. That's the only way I could frame it. And then it had lines showing how it was related to the rest of the population. And for a long time, I talked about this publicly, and then found that Dr. Michael, wish I forgot. So did his past life research. I have his book, it's hiding, and I threw it over there. So anyway, he did years of past life research on doing hypnotic regressions, people doing between life regressions. And he has a whole thing that he discovered on people, soul groupings, that's how he called them. And he basically framed it the exact same way as these lily pads. People choose who they want to incarnate with. Michael Newton, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Yeah, Dr. Michael Newton, thank you. And so that's it. So, and his research was very intensive about this thing that I saw. So that's really fascinating, that there was kind of a weird linkage that I wouldn't even dream up of. And then the next sequence was my higher self on a kind of like in a room with, it's like it could either be a base or a craft, I don't know. And so now it's my higher self, and it's this medical bed space, or maybe just a bed, like a flat bed. And there's two gray aliens. And then my higher self like kind of figured out who the Jeff Selver is going to be, and who, you know, what life he's going to have, and who he'll be incarnated with, like the family I'll be with and stuff. And he like generates this energy, and then pushes out this, you know, model of me. It's this kind of energy cocoon of what I would become. And so it's this model of me, and probably around it was like the body structure or something of like as an energy form. And so it comes out on this as this cocoon, and it's placed on this bed. And the elder, the main gray alien that I'm dealing with, is there. And she pulls out her ethereal form, and then she overlays it over top of this me form, this me energy form, Jeff Selver energy form. And it's like she's embedding her energy. This is what I understand now to be what Susie Hansen calls the dual soul. And John Mack actually has a whole thing on the dual identity. A lot of contactees have dual identities.
Right.
And there's something going on here where this is me and Susie Hansen, we connect on this stuff because she also saw a procedure. So this isn't something psychological going on in the heads of contactees. Aliens appear to be merging souls or merging ethereal bodies and before birth. And then the person feels connected to the phenomenon, right?
Yeah, right.
And and so they showed me that here. And then that's kind of like the next scene is I'm a ball, or the Jeff Selver who to be born is a ball, like an orb, and being placed in the womb of my mother. And my mother's sleeping, and there's gray aliens putting the orb into her, and she's at her home, and they're putting her into her belly. And then that's it. It's as if like the next scene is like I'm being birthed out of my mom's yoni, and it's like it's actually me coming out of the dimensional space I was within the elder, and I pop out and I reform. And what was actually happening dimensionally, so I was an orb watching the entire thing, having a shared experience with the higher self. And now it's called entrainment, right? So when you have a higher frequency thing, and then there's a lower frequency, you watch that higher frequency, you now get up to the higher frequency. So that orb of me sat there becoming at the higher level of the higher self, basically. It became its own higher self, or maybe, you know, just watching the higher self, it became the higher self. And then now when it transforms, I'm in my body as the 16-year-old, and I'm having this shock. So this kind of weird shock is going on, and I'm feeling the extended energy of my soul control my body, and I'm confused, and I'm like freaking out. Not really freaking out, but in shock. and then that's it. They don't really give any energy. They file out and they walk out the door, and I'm supposed to just follow them. And so they're just giving me all this stuff, and they're pummeling me with stuff. And it's safe to say that a bunch of other things happen here, but it's kind of closing down the scenario, and then they send me on my way. And so I'm in this kind of higher state about it all. And they put me onto a transport pad, and they basically say, we'll see you, but not for some time. And then they send me back down on the field that they picked me up on. Telepathic message comes to my head, go home, like a really big booming voice. And so I'm now convinced that I'm outside time, a guy who thinks he's just walking across a field. And now I'm, I guess, like the craft or something, like puts me back into time, and I'm now walking. And now all that's happened is I'm left with an imprint that something had occurred. And I feel good. There's actually a bit of a memory about that night, like unplaced excitement and happiness. But when the mind, the physical tissue brain wasn't there, you can only gravitate towards the things that he knows. So then he thinks, I'm going to be a famous musician one day. Something really fun's going to happen to me. I don't know what it is. And he's got all these physical tissue things that he thinks are important to him, and he can't quantify. And there isn't one other element that adds to how this all got sealed up. My higher self, the me, the subconscious me, the higher me, knows this is all for later. So just go live out your 16-year-old life and do what you're doing. So there's a part of me that knows okay, that happened, and then I don't know what it was. And then what will happen is a dream. And I have a dream of the aliens. When they picked me up and put me in I floated over the treetops. And that's the dream. I actually have the dream of I floated over the treetops. I feel intensely amazing from the dream. I can't place the dream, what it's all about. I would actually say all these years later, I saw God that night, and the dream kind of was like a way of giving my mind something to hold on to about the experience, and it becomes a marker. And I'm so impacted by the dream. The next morning, I wake up, I go to the field. And I'm like, what happened here? And I can remember the dream, and it feels like maybe it happened in real life. I can't place it. I don't understand it. And I feel really good. And that's the end of it. And I just move on with my life, and it becomes one of the weird events of my life. I consider it like a paranormal event for me at that time, without having any understanding. But why would I have a dream like that and feel so amazing and have this weirdness about it all? And that's the beginning of it. And that's how they seal it all up.
Wow. Wow. So that is one of the most profound sequence of events that I've heard from an abductee.
Even I can't contain it. That has to be understood too, right? Like I can tell the story, but it's so like, I still like, whoa, like I've meditated on all this stuff, all the details now. And I still like, don't know what to do with it fully. Like I can tell the story, and I think it helps people understand things, but it is intense. It's really intense. And I think what's very fascinating too is a lot of the contact events from this point onwards are a lot shorter. And I think it speaks to how intense it was too, because I kind of come back into that energy state every time they open me up before 1997. And it's a very fascinating trail of what happens to me, that as I'm like altering every time they're meeting me, and they're kind of altering and changing things and making things make sense for me when the consciousness event happens in 1997.
Hey, Jeff, John has a question here.
Sure.
And I think that this would be a good one for you at this moment. He says, how could I learn if I have a dual soul? Conscious beings, human and ET, sharing a human experience here on Earth.
Yeah. I think that it would manifest some way. Am I an expert at this? I'm not. I can say from my own experience that my dual soul wanted me to know. And I think that most dual souls would know. I think that you would see with me, the elder is this, that's the one I mentioned about the paranormal. The whole thing it was warming me up to is that someone else is sharing my ride with me. And that's kind of what this is. It wanted me to know that someone else is along for the ride. And I think that you're going to have an ability to interact with the phenomenon. That's my strongest guess, that you actually be able to communicate with UAP and bring them up, that kind of stuff. And and yeah, but I can't always know because I think the mystery is part of what drives us, and they know that. So sometimes people are left in mystery about how they interact or how they connect with the phenomenon. They know they do. They don't understand the details. And I think people are supposed to learn what they're supposed to learn when they're supposed to learn it. But I think I would like to believe you'd be able to interact with the phenomenon. Yeah, you got it, man. Yeah, the elder is my dual soul, and she is the paranormal entity, the orbs, the UAP. She's the whole gauntlet. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Interesting. And let me ask this, Jeff. So people that's listening, explain to us quickly what a dual soul is.
Yeah. So I can only go with my personal experience. Mm-hmm. It's dual identity. So it actually exists in indigenous lore. The idea that your soul has more than one identity. And Joel Nyman, I believe, was the first to apply it to the UAP phenomenon or the abduction phenomenon, as he was finding that his contactees or his abductees weren't calling themselves abductees. And I think this was in the 70s. And he was finding that the people didn't want to be identified as abductees. They were contactees, and they felt that they were part of a mission. They were part of something, part of a larger plan or a larger mission that was being, undergoing. And it was all, agreed upon. John Mack extended that. John Mack's got the dual identity. And so he found that people literally, while on craft, feel like they're a gray alien. Like, this is my other me. And so there's a real identity thing that goes on here, a psychology. I was skeptical when my memories were coming out and I was identifying with it, because I wasn't clear if, I'm aware I have a undergrad in psychology, and I'm aware of a weird social thing that goes on with humans, right? We take on the identity of the people we socially connect with. So if you're in a new environment, such as an alien craft, are you going to be taking on the identity as an alien because you're only hanging out with these aliens while you're in their environments? So then you're identifying that frequency, that electromagnetic state or that consciousess state, and you're saying, hey, these are my guys because I hang out with them and they're friendly with me. Now I'm an alien too. And so you got this psychology thing that goes on, and I wasn't clear if that's what that was. And it's really is Susie Hansen that I connected with, where I have a procedure and then she has a procedure. So there is literally, this isn't just psychology. At some point before your birth, the entities, have your ethereal body, and they're doing something with it. Now, I don't know that everyone who's a dual soul has a living entity like I do, who's merged with theirs. Some people, like Susie Hansen, feels like she's a dual soul, but she doesn't identify that dual soul as an external entity. So it's just a part of her own consciousness that she feels is merged with another alien, but it's a part of her. So it's this kind of identity thing that goes on. And then she is the one that helped me understand some of these details. That's why you can operate some of their tech. That's why they probably did the white room on me, because I actually have that frequency. So then they're able to, and also I'm actually really, really, really convinced it's how the memories were obscured. So they're actually able to do it to a frequency of my own dual soul. And then that's why I live my life not even knowing it, because it's actually happening to an alien part of me. And then they're all stuffing it into this frequency of an alien part of me that I don't know exists because I'm not into aliens. So I don't even go down that rabbit hole. I don't even attempt to open up that frequency and they hide everything and stash it all there. And so Susie really is the one that talks like, dual souls actually might be the ones that operating their crafts, communicating with UAPs, kind of that extension that you get that ability to interact and manipulate their tech. And they also might treat you like one of their own. And that's exactly how the elder talked with me right in the very first contact event. We want to help one of our own, right? We want to grow one of our own. That's how she framed it. So, yeah. Interesting. Well, then, have you ever looked into a mirror in a dream or out-of-body experience and seen an ET looking back at you? How about another human whom you do not recognize as the current you? No, I've never had that experience. Though, no, not quite like that. No, I haven't had it like that. Mm-hmm. All I know is that, I'm linked with the elder, and I've had what you're saying, John, kind of similar with DNA. And there's a whole other side to this with the DNA stuff. But the dual soul, no, I haven't quite thought of it like that. It's just a link, a telepathic link, a connection, and she lives my experience. And so she literally can, she knows what I'm writing about. She knows what I'm talking about. So I'll talk about something and then they'll go do the orb. I've actually had it many times where I'm saying something like, oh yeah, they do this all the time. And then I go out back after the presentation and then she's doing it. So she's like, no, she's basically saying, I know what you're talking about. And so that's a very deep shared part of the experience. And also very, when there's sadness or there's emotional distress, she's very comforting and she'll manifest outside as an object. So there's a weird shared relationship, not weird, I guess, but kind of weird to some people, but definitely weird to some people. And yeah, it's a definitely shared relationship. That this is why I say disclosure, like people don't even know where this goes yet. This is like, there's tips of icebergs is what this is. So yeah. She's along for the ride. That is exactly what it is. Yeah. Like she's along for the ride. That is it. Yeah. And I guess she's studying, she's learning, right? I think that they can see into the future, but there's probabilities, and they are, there's probabilities with everything, probabilities with the presidents and with disclosure and, with this set experiencer who's public, who's putting these ideas into the public's head. So then they're sitting on the ground, they're able to have someone and they're able to see with firsthand eyes. And I'm pretty certain I'm one of the millions. I'm pretty certain there's just so many of us, and there's people who are politicians and don't know, and scientists who don't know. And yeah, and I'm pretty certain that's what it's really like. And yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And, there's so much to grasp in this
There
story.
is. Yeah. It's disturbing, actually.
And not everybody has the same kind of experiences that each other have. So
That's true too.
It makes each story
so much variance. It's just that's what's so difficult about.
Yeah.
You just can't put it in any single box. There's just so much variety.
Yeah.
Even with other abductees who have had experiences with the gray aliens, how do you reconcile with just the diverse experience? I mean, to me, I think there must be multiple species that have that same morphology.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is my new thing I'm going down towards. So something bigger is going on here. So I actually, had some, no worries, John. Thank you, buddy, for sticking around all the time. Really love you around here. It's great. So I was frustrated. So yeah, even my message, right? I have a message, I have this contact, and I'm frustrated because there's people with opposing messages. There's whole people who, they've got lots of followers. Gray aliens are the dark evil ones, right? They got this whole thing going on. And so they're convincing people of this. And then that person they create challenges for me. And so then I have this idea in my head that I should be going out as a warrior, fighting, right? Okay, I have to fight that person who's got that message. Let's go down the rabbit hole, get their books, tear them all apart. And literally the elder is like throwing a message in my head. It's supposed to be that way. And I'm like, wait, what?
That's
what? What are you saying? Like, what? And I had to sit there and struggle with that for a small bit. And what I can't help but notice is a weird game about my own contact events. The aliens are originating outside of the afterlife, guaranteed. The aliens displayed an understanding of duality, non-duality, sorry. And yeah, the relationship of duality in our existence. They gave me 2 timelines to work. They were working with me in 2 timelines. So it's over 6 years, the first 3 and the last 3. And the first 3 are positive. That's where the white room is. It's all this spiritual stuff. And the last 3 are traumatic. And it's really truthful that you can't give me the experience of the white room without giving me something to bang off of as well, too, to have a trauma, to have a growth off of. And I understand that now presently. At the time, I didn't, and I was fighting them. And I see now this kind of grander picture about duality. And it would explain some things about what I was getting really curious about. Because it kind of looks like some of the events in the past are gray aliens, but they aren't acting like they're There's a contact event. There's a big, very, very large popular sighting in Knoxville. Is that what it is, in Tennessee or something? And it's this red orb that comes down, and there are a bunch of farmer families. This guy's like 12 people at home, maybe 6 or something, can't remember. And then these red things float out, and they're doing this, and they look like zombies. And all they do is they terrorize the family, and it goes down into the 50s or the 60s. And the way they behaved, though, I kept saying, like, they terrorize the family, right? They end up they float. They try to the guys come out. And they try to shoot it with a shotgun. It pretends to be shot, and it flows down as if it's like drifting off of a leaf. It's just playing with them. It touches their hair. It's like it comes off from the roof and touches their hair, and it just, and then they end up being at the window, and they keep shooting the window. Things keeps peering through the window, and they can't shoot it because it's, you're not able to shoot these entities. And I step back from that, and I'm like, it acts like a gray alien, because from all the stuff I know, the gray aliens really do seem to play off of humans' fears. When you have terror, they really seem to amplify that terror up. They want to break your ego. So they really do seem to be these kind of like ego breakers. And I'm starting to see a picture of, I'm convinced that some of the sightings in the 50s and 60s that were just humanoids might have been shape-shifting aliens. Yeah. And I'm not really clear how much variety we're dealing with, but I sometimes think we're dealing with the same thing manifesting in different ways for different people. And, if they're going to give me a positive message, and they're aware of the non-duality, they may have to give someone a negative message, because they're coming and interacting with our physical world. So then there's a positive message, and they might be also the person, they're inspiring the negative message. They might be giving both things. I'm not clear. I'm not saying they are, but I'm taking it up another notch, because I know they're coming from the afterlife, and that changes a lot about the perceptions about what they're dealing with and how they're dealing with us. And I also can't help but notice that they're not being clear with anybody, with anything, about anything, even crop circles. If you want to give us a message, why aren't you blazing it into the side of a building, right? You have to make it always in this realm where we have to use our intuition with everything. Every contactee, Whitley Strieber, Chris Bledsoe, you have to sit there and use and make choices on your own individually and use your intuition. Is this right or is this not right? Is it real? Is it not real? They might purposely throwing in the confusion because they want you or the person to discern things themselves. Use your intuition. Why would they do that? Well, the premise of my story is that they're taking over. And not like an alien invasion, but nature. There's a thing here where they're switching things up. Maybe they're choosing people. Maybe they're wanting people who can think for themselves. Maybe they're very aware of what's going on, and they're sitting there looking at the different things, and they're sifting through people and how people respond. Because it's true that they haven't been clear, and it's true that I haven't found deception yet. That's the other problem too. I haven't really found clear deception. I haven't found lying. I haven't found I haven't found it yet. I found complexity and comprehension is what I found. I found dimensional misunderstanding. I found, we're dealing with things that are in realms that humans have trouble comprehending. And when we even take a touch of it, a taste of it, we don't know how to handle it. Even as I'm saying, I can't handle my own contact events. And I know a lot of people can't. and so we're dealing with things that are just such scales up that it's starting to make sense that there might be a procedure going on here about the way that they're handling all alien information. I even think there's a whole bunch of people out there going on and on about ascension. And they're going on about certain humanoid races, Arcturians and stuff. I'm like, you don't know, man. That could be a gray alien behind that. You don't know. And that's the thing I think we're dealing with. I think some channels might be them. And they're saying, okay, we're going to give out a certain type of message with this person, because that person, we're going to make it authentic. We're going to, be this thing. We're going to show up at a paranormal event or as an orb. And so then they're purposely isolating certain messages. And I know they can shapeshift. And if you haven't had lifetime contact, and all you had was a single night where a craft came down and humanoids came out, that could have been anything now. I don't know that was the humanoids you say it was. So I think that there's scales of I think the bottom line is we're in a simulation, and all entities know it. And I'm not clear that we're not dealing with here's another example. Why are the Bigfoots? We all know we're paranormal guys. We all love the Bigfoots. I'm assuming you love the Bigfoot stories, the cryptoids. They're doing the exact same thing, right? They're real, they're paranormal, and they're not showing themselves either. So we have something that's kind of living in this outer paranormal realm that refuses to show itself to the, structured human brain. And maybe because of terror, maybe because of, I don't know what reasons there are yet, but it's starting to make sense that they don't want us. Maybe this whole logical infrastructure part is the problem. And that's what I kind of keep coming down to as well, that they're living in this kind of ethereal realm, and they need us to be ethereal as well too, or ethereal in our approach. So then they're willingly throwing out some confusion, or maybe it's not even confusion for them. Maybe they're throwing out versions of the messages and isolating information, and maybe there's a bit of duality in there, but anyway, that's a long speech on that. But I guess I'm in the process of trying to understand some of this myself and make sense of it.
And it makes sense, Jeff. I do thoroughly believe that Bigfoot is interdimensional. The same
a lot of us do.
Same as the majority of cryptids. I mean, because just how when you talk to people that have seen Bigfoot, it's like they're walking through the woods or on a trail or something. They see what they perceive to be Bigfoot. Bigfoot now is, oh man, I'm busted, and steps into that dimension. To let you scratch your head going, did I really just see that? Or you know what I mean? So I totally believe that. And I believe that aliens do it all the time. The same with ghosts. They come in and out of this realm. They choose who they want to see them.
That's true.
Definitely. Also, Lisa has a question before we wrap this up. She says, do you think the NHI or Greys are part of the secrecy behind disclosure? Whitney Strieber has suggested this.
The secrecy behind disclosure? The secrecy behind are part of the secrecy. So I don't know exactly what the words the secrecy means, but but I think that they are the main entities behind disclosure. They are, yes, 100%. I've been saying this. I'm pretty certain those drones, I would actually say it I've been saying this since December. Those are my guys, because I've seen my entity, who's an orb, who acts just like this, Jim, you got this kind of weird meteor orb, or this kind of weird orb. Well, she turned into a plane. And then she stops being that orb, and she's a plane all the time. And she behaves exactly the same way, except now she's closer. And then that was back in June that started up. And now the behaviors all replicate themselves with these drones. People see planes that don't make normal plane noises. They have weird FAA lights that aren't really regular, but do have FAA lights. And that's all the stuff that I was seeing. And some of it acting or pretending to be a drone. And some, like a mayor out in New Jersey, was reporting the exact same description I had. And that, for me, I'm actually convinced, because everything I know, that the entities plan to make themselves known, that they were working with or were in communication with some type of government. I'm convinced of that too. And then there is some type of, some type of bigger push has to happen to get the public aware of their presence. And do I believe the American government wants to do that? I don't know, and I kind of feel like they don't. But I think there is an HI presence that wants to be known and needs a degree of cooperation with human leadership about that presence. And I'm of full belief that that's what the Lou Elizondos and all those Chris Mellon guys are actually attempting to do. They're attempting out of that they believe that that's for the right reasons. And all it matches with my story. And I was public with this before a lot of this was ramping up. So yeah, that the entities plan to make themselves, put themselves on Earth. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Jeff, we've come down to the end of our journey here, and all I can say is wow. I mean, like I was saying just a little bit ago, each person's experience is completely different.
All of it.
There was subtle similarities, but
agreed.
That's what I love about talking with people like yourself. and getting these experiences because they're so diverse.
Yeah.
It's been an honor to have you on, and
Thank you, Todd. Thank you.
we want to have you back on because this is a very interesting topic, especially what you have. Because how many contacts was there? 27,
26, not including the children, the childhood contact events. Technically, altogether 31.
31. Yeah. So yes, to delve into these 31, because we skipped around a little bit. But yes, most definitely. And you have other things. You have video of UFOs that you have.
That's correct. Yeah.
Captured. So I definitely want to delve in on that as well.
Yeah, you got it.
So yes, fantastic.
Yeah. Always happy to be back, guys. You got it. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we want to thank everybody that joined in, that listened, commented, things like that. It's because of you people that make us proud of what we're doing. And, it's all part of disclosure. We want to help get the word out there. I'm sure that there's going to be people that see this in the future and they're going to say, man, I had a very similar experience to what Jeff had. And then they can reach out to you. And speaking of reaching out, I put all your links in the comments.
Great.
So people can find you. What is your email, Jeff?
My full name, Jeff Selver @gmail.com.
Okay. All right. In case people want to send you email, I'd put out your Amazon page, your website, Facebook, YouTube. So
you got it. That's great. Thanks so much, Todd. I appreciate it. Yeah.
No, thank you. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And we hope to see you all on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. And you can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.